Hello everyone, my name is Lucandrea Baraldi. I'm an Italian designer, also recently graduated from the Design Academy. Can we please have this slide? My project is called Acoustic Symbol of Peace, the Peace Engine. Part of it is here in the picture behind me, or here to your right if you're in the room, and is this Tetris-like composition of cubes and lines, but it's also what you hear in this moment. It is an installation that invites people to give their personal interpretation of peace and combines them through algorithm and creates a new symbol of peace, which I call the acoustic symbol of peace. Hopefully by the end of this presentation it's going to be a little clearer how it works and why I made these decisions. The whole project is meant to question the current symbols that represents peace, in that to me are unsuited to do so, as they lack one or both of these aspects, which are complexity of meaning and neutrality. Take for example the CND sign is probably the first symbol that comes to your head when thinking about peace, that circle with a vertical line and two oblique lines. Well, that symbol, because of its origins and how it is used, is more interpretable as an anti-war symbol, which is of course just a very small side of what peace is. About neutrality, think about a second very common symbol, which is the white dove. That represents, to me, cultural supremacy. How can such a strong Christian symbol represent peace universally? There are also other symbols that, to me, are not very suited because their interpretation is very ambiguous. An example is the national gifts, which are gifts given from all the nation to the Peace Palace for this foundation, to celebrate this foundation. And there is this one particular one, which is very interesting. It bears really small owls in the bottoms that in our Western world represent wisdom, but in other, of course, represent evil. Of course, it was perceived as kind of offensive to represent peace. So my goal with this project was to create a new symbol which bears complexity, but also neutrality. It was clear since the beginning that I couldn't work with visuals because even the most basic visual elements bear so much cultural connotation. So I turned to sound, which apart from being a very powerful means of communication, it's also so much more lighter, freer of culture when it's taken apart from its source. Starting from neutrality, I researched how can I find the purest, more innocent, if you want, less cultural sound. So I turned to, well, the physics of sound. The most basic element of sound is a sine wave. If you take any sound and you strip it down of all its characteristics, you end up with a sine wave, which is energy at a single frequency. Okay, so I had the first step. But of course, this one tone cannot represent peace. Maybe it represents more dictatorship. It's one choice, it's no choice. So I gave it a space where it could move freely, and the space is a scale. It's a musical scale. Of course, musical scales are very cultural. Every culture is its own scale, and what makes their music so typical. So, of course, I couldn't use any of those, so I created my own. I created a new peace scale that is based on something we have all in common, which is the physics of our world. It's based on this thing called the overtone series. It's kind of a hidden structure behind every sound that gives every sound its characteristic. So I have a tone, I have a space where you can move, but of course, there is a lot more than peace represents, of course, than just being neutral. So I turned into I thought maybe I can use this into a more kind of collective way. Maybe I need some subjectivity in it, probably, and so that's when this structure, the peace engine, came in. It starts from subjectivity. As you can see, there are 3 elements in it, 3 cubes. The one on the left, where you can enter, it invites people to, evaluate a little bit the concept of peace. Peace starts from every single person, is the subjective part of peace, not only because it's as a subjective interpretation, but because it has to start from an inner psychological and spiritual peace. It also represents the kind of the right of existence, the right of freedom, the right of choice, of expression. People are invited to give their own acoustic interpretation of peace by humming or singing, even by speaking, but what I'm looking for really is the acoustic intention, not the meaning of words. When the first input gets in the installation, it goes through the second step, which is that little cube in the middle. That is the brain of the installation, and it has 2 roles. The first is to translate this personal, very subjective input into a neutral language, the one I was talking about before. So every input is turned into a single sine wave that is free to move in the scale. And the second role that it has is to ease conflict. This is the second, I think probably the most important part of the concept of peace, is the conflict resolution. It is coexistent, and it is this connection to the concept of justice. So basically what it does is it evaluates the, I call it, needs of every input. So how loud it is, so the amplitude, what kind of journey it goes through in the scale, so the frequency, and also the rhythm, so the speed, and how it is divided rhythmically. And what it does is kind of acts as a moderator. It tries to find a new balance between these 2 inputs, and so that they can coexist in a balanced way. Of course, when the third inputs come, then this happens again, and then this new formed community has to adapt to the third input that comes, and so on and so forth, until create an archive, a community of inputs that at the end create one unique piece, which is, the acoustic symbol of peace. You can hear it now going. Today there's been some contributions, so this is kind of his first state. And after this talk, I invite everyone to give their own contribution. And thank you.